time is now 6 p.m. on September the 27th, 2023, and this regular meeting of the El Campo Independent School District Board of Trustees is now called to order. Let the record show that this meeting was duly posted in accordance with section 551.043 of the Texas Government Code with regards to notice of public meetings, and that there is a quorum of members present. At this time, will we please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for bringing all of us together tonight to do this service for the community. Let us remember that we're all here for the same common goal, and that is for the betterment of the young people in our town. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item at every meeting is public comment. At regular meetings, the board allots 15 minutes to hear persons who desire to make public comments to the board that are not related to items on the agenda on the night of the regular meeting. Persons wishing to participate in this portion shall sign up before the meeting and indicate the topic. Delegations of more than 5 persons will appoint one person to present their views to the board. No presentation will exceed 5 minutes. We do have public comment today. As we said, the time is limited to 5 minutes, and just so everybody kind of knows what goes on with public comment is that it's a one-way street. You comment, we listen, and there's no back and forth interaction between the board because it's not an agenda item, so the board can't discuss it legally. So this time, Dustin Moss.
I'll be speaking.
Okay, and what was your? Autumn.
Moss.
Okay. Thank you for coming. It takes a little courage to come up here and do this, so we always applaud people who participate. Mr. Dubrock, will you give her at about, with a minute left, he'll wave at you and say,
Okay.
hey, you got about a minute.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Peanuts, raw soy, dairy, and eggs could end the lives of our children, but an EpiPen could save them. In fact, it could save the lives of 8% of American children diagnosed with food allergies. In July, we met with Hutchins administration and provided medical information to ensure that our children, Winifred and Tobia, and the school had the tools to keep our kids safe. The same effort hasn't been reciprocated, and we've seen this in the many 504 violations. The medical information we provided would have parents to assume that placing our students with teachers having food allergy experience would be the most responsible thing to do. Instead, our son had to move classes, and our daughter's teacher had to be restated the regulations to her 504 plan after several violations were made. Though teachers aren't entirely at fault here, the lack of allergen education and support from the administration should be examined, as they gave teachers less than a week to prepare for our children's needs. Referencing another violation, our daughter, whose allergies were not clearly taken seriously, was left with a para with no background and no allergen safety training, knowledge at all of any type of her allergens. Clearly, she wasn't even being cared for properly in any aspect, as the school allowed for a high school student to feed my child and put her life at risk. Lastly, referencing the Dewberry trip, Hutchins sent home a generic permission form. There's no information about how they're going to protect or accommodate for our children in case of an emergency. We would think that a medical plan of action would be stapled to the forms, since this is a pre-planned trip and the school is aware of their needs. This district and the SHAC committee should be at the forefront of innovation to make things more equitable for kids like our own. The district will encourage for staff to volunteer for very strict training to carry a gun, but will not ask the same staff to volunteer for free life-saving EpiPen training to protect kids like ours. At this point, sending our kids to school seems more like a game of Russian roulette, where we know something will continue to occur. It will be because of a broken system for kids like my own, and the very clear example of how little care has been taken to make things more inclusive for all kids. Thank you.
Thank you. That will bring us to the next portion of our meeting, which is recognition. We do have recognition tonight. Obviously, one of our things we'd like to do. We'll start with.
We wanted to start with Coach Sable and the.
Yeah, let's do that.
And then
Coach
we'll
Sable.
allow Ms. Smith to talk about the National Merit Program. So Coach Sable, do you want to come in and explain to everybody what this recognition is for? This is from the National
Federation of Fast Pitch Coaches, or National Fast Pitch Coaches Association. And you have to be a member, obviously, to nominate your team for that. But I knew that our team was extremely blessed in the books, and so I was able to nominate them at the end of the season for that award. And like a day ahead of time, I told Mr. Fleener, I said, well, I don't know what we got, but we got something, because they asked for a picture of the team, and the next day they announced, and we had the top weighted GPA in the nation of teams that were nominated. So it was exciting.
Well, that is something cool. I see a couple of them.
Yes, there's several.
So-
There's Carl. I see Carl.
So, Mr. Sable, would you mind, do you know what the GPA was?
It was a 5.0.
5.06?
Yes, sir.
And it was the #1 weighted, well, I want to make sure he didn't know first.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to steal his thunder, I was hoping he had it, but,
Coach Sable didn't even know the scale went that high.
Yeah. Seriously.
5.06 weighted GPA, and they ranked #1 nationally for schools who use weighted GPAs, so
That's awesome.
we commend all of that.
It was, the next school was below 5, so.
That's correct.
It was a significant, so we were excited, so. Very cool.
All right. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'll make sure I got the ones that are here. Kiana,
Y'all need to come up.
come on up.
How about I read them to you, Mr. Wells, and then, or Mr.
That sounds
Russell,
good.
and then I'll hand them to you over the table. Ms. Warner?
Front and center.
Ms. Wells? Ms. Warner? Ms. Spitzmiller? Ms. Hoffer? Ms. Fisher? And Ms. Pubella?
Should be Kylie Akun.
I got them over here, but Mr. Russell didn't have them pulled yet.
Oh, okay.
So is Rihanna here?
No,
I didn't see the miles.
Both Kiana and Rihanna? That's the only other ones we had on our list.
She should have had Kylie.
Callie, come
Oh,
on.
Callie, come on up.
You're good.
It was one of my late ones. Yeah.
All right, so let's get,
See how
squeeze
great I
in,
am.
squeeze in. There we go.
We do this. Yes.
Yeah, Coach Sable. He taught them everything they know.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take several so I can give her a good one. All right. Continue.
Good. Congratulations.
We apologize. Our mistake for not having one printed. We
Well, it was me, because I was late Thursday.
It'll be here, I promise you.
we will have it ready for you.
And get it delivered to your campus. I went to almost every game. There were no mental errors. All smart players. Okay.
That doesn't include coaching mistakes.
That brings us to the College Board recognitions.
So that is Ms. Smith.
Yes. So we were here last year, we're excited to be back again this year, but even more excited because we have a lot of kids this year. 3.6 million students in the United States took the PSAT last year. Out of those students, the top 50,000 scores who have a 3.5 GPA are recognized. Now, that 50,000 sounds like a big number, but when you figure it, our kids are gonna be in the top 1.4% of the scores in the nation, which is pretty outstanding. So we have 13 students that are being recognized by the College Board for that particular award, for those particular awards. It's a great accomplishment. It's another step in helping them build their college resumes and helping colleges see them and recognize them. We also have one student who I'll say for the end who jumped up a little bit out of that 50,000, and he's being recognized in the 34,000, which puts him at about the 0.9% of scores nationwide. Last year we had 2 students who received awards. This year we've got a total of 14. So that says a lot for this group of kids and how well they did on these tests. So the first award is for the Rural and Small Town Award. These are students who scored among their peers nationwide in rural and small schools. So some of my kids aren't here. We had NHS practice, we've got kids showing heifers, we've got CCD, all that kind of stuff going on. But those, I'm gonna call everybody even if they're not here because they deserve to be recognized. Grace Amistoy, she is showing right now in Waco, so I know she's not here. And Brooke Bachok said she couldn't be here, she's at NHS practice. Emily Beechwood is here, and she's the National Rural and Small Town Award. James Dortick, National Rural and Small Town Award. Luke Gibbs, National Rural and Small Town Award. Molly Andros, National Rural and Small Town Award. Emery Russell, National Rural and Small Town Award. And Chase Starling, National Rural and Small Town Award. Okay, then we have Christopher Luera, National Hispanic Recognition Award. Is Christopher here? Okay. Salvador Reyes, National Hispanic Recognition Award. Lauren Reyna, did Lauren make it? Lauren is receiving the both the National Hispanic and the Rural and Small Town Award. Yandel Sanchez, Yandel right here. He is also receiving the National Hispanic and Rural Small Town Award. And then Dylan Johnson, Dylan here. Okay, Dylan is receiving the National African American Award, the National Hispanic Award, and the Rural and Small Town Award. And then, our last one, the College Board Committee selects 34,000 scores to set them apart from the 50,000. They come out of the 50,000, but it's the top 34,000. And this year we had one student, and he is being awarded the letter of commendation by College Board, and that's Ty Inner.
Good work,
And Ty, they sent you an extra little award from the College Board for that.
Nice.
Mr. Russell, I'm not sure you should be in this picture.
No way. No way.
Just saying, I think we might need to bring your wife in.
Girls make it from,
Yeah, Ty, come to the
Guys
back.
in the back, yeah.
You're a back.
You're on call.
I'm very well.
There, you know how to do it. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take a couple so I can get a good one for her, and I think we're good. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Now, we are about ready to start into the business part of our agenda. Now, I know all of you have been dying to stay for an entire board meeting, but now would be a good time. If you choose not to stay for that part, you can watch it tomorrow on video, because we do video it, but you're more than welcome to stay. Please stay. The board does some amazing things, but if some of you have things to do, like get to NHS practice, or watch the Astros on TV, or whatever it might be.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. I would have.
Yeah, did they show? No, you had.
Number 5.
Just make sure we get so that she has. Thank you. That is pretty cool. Yeah. We need to make sure we recognize it. It's a pretty big one.
You're gonna write that in the will ahead of time.
They're all signing in, so we can't get through.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
You said we could leave.
No, you're
We won't be here very long though. Miss Crowell, you know you love me.
Do love you.
Oh my
Well, we nearly got swept up in the
I know.
going
You just
out.
got carried away.
Nearly
We
did.
were pushed out,
I've been there.
but Paul said, no, we have to stay.
Crowd-
He
crowd
pushed you back
mentality.
in. Thank you, Paul, for pushing her back in.
Alright. Item number 4 is our consent agenda. According to local BE policy, the consent agenda is provided that includes items of a routine and reoccurring nature. Items that a board member wants to see considered under a single motion can be pulled out. Does anybody want to see anything on the same motion? That being said, we will, I'll seek a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in the board packet. I have a motion by Mr. Brock, second by Ms. Smith. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously with one absent. That'll bring us all the way down to presentation items. C1, presentation discussion of the 2023 STAAR data following the delay in the TEA release of accountability ratings.
Perfect, that's me, and I'm disappointed. Nobody stayed except for the people
Go,
that
Tina,
know
go,
everything.
go, Tina, go.
I stayed, Tana.
I noticed that, Rich. I was actually worried. I thought you might jump.
I didn't know we had a choice.
Well, you know, Rich sometimes finds a way.
No, that's fine. You can leave that. It's-
I might have changed something on you.
That's why I asked you to leave it.
Oh, goodness.
I guess I have a PowerPoint, but then I decided to go Demetrius route tonight, so there you go. He's not even listening to me. All right, I am so glad to be here tonight to present to you our 2023 STAAR performance data tables for El Campo. We're going to focus on 3 sets of data tonight, and I want you to please stop me at any point if you have any questions, because it's a lot of information. So I want to first start with 2023 STAAR performance table, which compares El Campo to Region 3 and the state. So if you will go to Hutchins, it's going to be our first campus. I want you to focus on the first column of data that says percent approaches and above. That number reflects all of our students that met approaches, meets, and masters. So if you'll look at that column, you'll see that for grade 3, we scored a 72%. This region 3 scored 74%, and the state scored 77%. So the first column after that is going to be your district versus state number. Okay, everybody got that? Okay. So as far as Hutchins, we did score slightly below the state in both math and reading. Anybody have any questions on that one? Okay, flip to the next one, which is Northside. So again, let's focus on that first column. I want to give you a few minutes just to kind of scan the data, and then I would like for someone to share something positive that they might see.
On the second page?
On the second page, Northside.
The math.
Oh, the
The
math.
math.
Wow.
And math and science are off the chart.
So is
I don't think the ESC is accurate.
Oh, you don't?
126%.
Where's that? Oh, yeah, I think there might be a problem there. Didn't even notice that. Not sure where that came from.
Wow.
But as long as the.
It's, yeah, we're comparing the two, the state and our local. So yes. so good point, math and science.
Our region generally trails the state a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're usually pretty much the top,
Of course, I,
so,
Of the region. But that's fantastic.
pretty neat.
Those fourth and fifth graders are getting after it.
Fifth grade did outstanding.
We're gonna have to have a bigger board meeting whenever they get to be seniors.
Yep.
yeah. And also, you know, on that note, since you recognize the math and the science, all the way to the far right, and the reason I'm not focusing so much on those columns is we're gonna really talk about those when it gets to accountability next month. But if you'll notice on math and science, all the way to the far right, that master's column, that's pretty impressive.
Very.
So, okay, next chart is going to be our middle school. And there's a lot of data points on this page, so I'm gonna give you just a few seconds to kind of look through that and kind of see what you see and ask any questions.
So, eighth grade math is broken out into
Yep.
algebra.
That is correct.
So you're, and you have to pretty much place into algebra, is that right? Or
Yeah,
it's an elective?
Yeah.
You can elect into it, but they're, usually the kids that are struggling aren't electing into, so their
That
numbers
is-
are gonna be higher.
that is correct.
But does it average out? Do those kids get to, they don't get to
No.
be counted into their cohort with their other eighth graders? It's just algebra kids?
It's algebra and then it's eighth grade, so you'll
That
see
puts
the
you at a
grade 8
big
math.
Disadvantage on the.
Right.
They get credit for them on the accountability.
On
at the
accountability.
Junior high,
Mhm.
but the bigger, well, if we look at it overall by campuses, now those kids going into high school are not gonna be tested. So those are what we call those kids that are accelerated learners. So we have to test them either an SAT or an ACT at some point in high school because they were not tested on math otherwise. Everyone
So-
else is tested English 1 and 2 because we don't do any accelerated learning.
So as a freshman, excuse my ignorance, it's probably on the second page, but the kid that took algebra in the eighth grade, he takes the test here. When he gets to be a freshman, does he take it again?
No,
No.
don't.
He's down.
They have no math. or
So that-
counts.
That
So
hurts
that's-
the high school.
That kills the high school freshman class.
It does, so the amount of masters generally goes down with that.
Yeah.
Because generally, if you're teaching it in the junior high, you're expecting those kids to get to the master's level, because that's generally an advanced or an honors type
Right, they-
class.
Yeah,
But
They had to get there.
here, our eighth graders are within
yeah.
4 points. 7 of the state, but 4 of the region, and a lot of those other districts don't do algebra in the eighth grade anymore.
Right.
And how is that a 101?
You know, I have no idea, but that's how I equated.
No, it's how it rounds up. For example, excuse me, there are 91 kids
Not many kids in high
who
school.
took Algebra 1 in the 8th grade. So of the 250 in the 8th grade, 91 of them, over a third of them, took Algebra 1 and did not take 8th grade math.
Okay.
So your 8th grade math has 90 kids out of it
Okay.
who already showed they know Algebra 1.
Right.
And every one of them passed. And if you'll look, they show 40% of those kids mastered. So that's why this data is,
Correct. Yeah.
we wanted you to be able to look at it.
Well, having been a middle school
Yes,
social
ma'am.
study teacher,
Yes.
I'm impressed
Mm-hmm.
because we have struggled a
Yes.
long time.
Yes. Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
yay.
We're on the right track.
Yeah.
Definitely on the right
Yeah,
track.
I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
That social studies usually tracks with reading and language arts though, doesn't it?
Science and social studies both are reflective of.
Because they're
Our
almost a
reading
reading
language
test
arts.
is
Yes.
what it is.
Well, so it's nice.
Well, they changed a few years ago. It used to be more thematic
Yeah.
in scope, but now we generally say it's a mile wide and an inch deep, because you have to know specific facts. And so it's gotten a little bit more difficult, and then with the new testing format, it actually became even more difficult this year. So the way the junior high did, they performed exceptionally well, I think.
So this, we didn't have any data for the last 2 or 3 years that was usable, right? Because they kept changing the.
Well,
that
we're
right?
still in the same boat right now with 2023 because everything was shifted in the test, so.
Right, but at
Next
least,
year's
but
gonna
at
be
least, we
different.
didn't even get a
Well,
comparison.
let Alicia answer that, cause I think that's a good segue into what she was gonna present to you
In
today.
2020, we didn't have a test.
Yeah.
So no data there. 2019 was pre-COVID, so you're dealing with different factors there. 2021, we got a test. 2022, we got a test. But then in 2022, the test, there was some changes with, no more writing, so
Right.
that's gone. Right. And then in 2023, now you have a total redesign of the test. So how they manipulated the test, the format of the test was different.
And how they graded it.
And how they grade, yes.
I guess my-
So points versus.
My question is, could you, like, can you track like the 6th graders?
Well, we'll get to that in just a
She's
minute.
got
It's
that data in
coming.
there. We have it, but you just have to keep those factors in the back of your head. Yes.
Yeah, we've got it in a couple of slides back. But so, with that being said, the number, or the green areas, that's all great.
It's great.
Yeah.
So, and we're seeing a lot of positives here, so. Anything else on middle school? Okay, let's go to high school. All right, on high school, you'll take a look. Let me know if you have any questions. Notice their biology and US history.
I know Tanda's telling you to look at biology, what I want you to look at is Algebra 1, because over, let's say, close to 35% of our kids
Correct.
didn't take the Algebra 1 test because they took it last year,
Right.
the year prior.
Pretty sure.
Okay, anything on that one? Okay, so let's go now to the next report that I have, and this is ECISD STAAR performance, and we're gonna look at it in 2 ways. We're gonna look at a 3-year comparison by grade, and then we're gonna look at a cohort of students over 3 years. So we're gonna start with English Language Arts. And let me tell you how we're going to read this data. So this chart shows our district's English Language Arts data by grade and year. So if you look to the far right, there are 2 columns. One is named year to year, and then one is named cohort group. For the year to year column, those numbers represent the difference between 2022 data and 2023 data. Okay, and those are different sets of students. Then the next thing that I want you to look at, well, let me go ahead and give you an example of that one. So if you look at grade 3, we went from a 71 in 22 to a 72 in 23, which was a 1 point increase. So you see the green 1 on the right year to year. So now let's talk about the cohort column. That represents the difference between the same group of students moving from one grade level to the next, so you can follow and track the colored diagonal lines, okay? So for example there, look at grade 6 in 2022, they scored a 69, that's your blue column, and when that same group of students moved to the 7th grade, they scored an 81 in 2023. So that was a 12-point increase, and you'll see that over in the cohort column. So all the green numbers in the last 2 columns reflect positive increases. And so I'm gonna give you just a minute to kind of track those numbers and ask any questions.
So the data that I think would be useful would be the cohort group as it compares to the state average. That would show, regardless of the test that's being given, regardless of that they changed the test, regardless, you could see, all right, when they were 5th graders, they were 2 points above the state average. When they were 6th graders, they were 3 points ahead of the state average. When they were 7th graders, they were 5 points ahead. So we're gaining ground against the state, because that's what you get measured against, is the state average, and that's the.
Unfortunately, you're correct.
No, I mean, I bet we look pretty good. I mean,
Yeah, we probably do. I haven't
No, I don't think-
put it on a,
I don't think we're
diagonal like
hiding
that,
data or anything, but I just think that,
Right.
that's the useful data
Yeah.
that
would be.
correlates with with the district goal of
Yeah.
each kid getting a year's education in a year's time versus the state.
and that's coming in later reports. Okay, so that'd be interesting to look at.
Okay. Well, I'm
I
not,
can certainly
I'd love to see an
explore
added
that.
column and
I
something.
would too.
Okay.
This report looks great.
Yeah,
Don't
it's
get me
really-
wrong.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's perfect. No, I'm glad y'all are commenting and giving me input and asking lots of questions. So anything on ELAR that y'all want me to explain? Are we good?
Good.
Okay, go to the math. So, same year to year in cohort.
Wow, that fourth grade to fifth grade to sixth grade group, the yellows, they just kinda jumped all over the place in both math and,
But see, the test is changing.
Test.
The test changes. So it's hard to
Yeah.
compare that,
Right.
yeah, but.
which is what I was saying about in a second ago,
Yeah.
that the only way to compare it is everybody took the same test, so you compare to the average.
That's some big differences.
Well, even the, if you look at the sixth, seventh, and eighth, and the peach colored there,
Yeah.
or any of them, you got an algebra out of those
Right.
eighth grade scores.
Okay, any other comments, questions about that one?
Nope.
All right, let's move to the next one, which is our science and social studies. We do not, we're not able to do a cohort on science and social studies, but we've got the year to year, and of course, here again, we're all green.
That's awesome.
What about, approximately what grade do they do the US history test? Is it
Usually in,
Junior.
Juniors
Yeah.
in eighth grade.
so it's primarily Algebra 1, Biology, freshman year, and then, US history, junior year, and English 2 and sophomore year. Okay, anything on science, social studies? Okay, and our last set of reports are our growth report, STAAR Growth, and this of course is my favorite. And this report shows ECISD students' growth performance from 2022 to 2023. And we're gonna start with ELAR. Now this one looks a little complicated, and I'm gonna kind of walk you through how to read it, and then I'm gonna give you some time to reflect. So starting with ELAR, if you will look on the left-hand side of the chart, you're gonna see STAAR 2022. And then you're gonna see the categories of low did not meets, high did not meets, low approaches, high approaches, meets, and masters. Now, if you'll go along the top, you're gonna see the 2023 STAAR, and you're gonna see those same 6 categories. So I want you to start at the bottom right-hand number, where you see 213. This number, that 213, reflects students who scored masters in 2022 and masters in 2023. So you know those old multiplication tables that y'all used to do in elementary, where you put your finger in the top and you put it on the side and you come together till it meets? That's what we're doing on this chart, okay? That's the best way to explain it.
Love it.
Okay, so we're gonna let's look at another one. So for 2022, I want you to look at the row for low approaches. So everybody look at low approaches on 2022, that's on the side purple. And now I want you to follow that row all the way over to the number 54. That's in the column of meets. What that tells us is that number reflects students who scored low approaches in 22 and they grew to meets in 2023. The best thing about this chart is yours is on paper, but the principals have this on computer, and all of those numbers are clickable. So when they click on that 54, they see all the list of the kids that went from low to meets. Okay, so it's an interactive report.
It's just complicated a little deal here.
So
Any questions about how you're reading the chart?
I think it is kind of complicated, but let's look at the green at the bottom, masters, in 2022. And then the very first column, low, does not meet. There's one student in there.
Correct.
So last year, one student mastered the test, and this year, not only did they not meet, but they were one of the low did not meet. So the principals can click on that one student
Oh,
And-
okay.
and find out who that student is and wonder, I would use my wife for example. When she was in 5th grade, her 5th grade scores were horrible. Why? Well, she lost her father in March of her 5th grade year. So the fact that she even finished school is amazing. How she did on the test needs to be not our problem. But the principals can then click on that kid and find out who that kid is to see if there was something we should be looking into. So I think that's what Tana was trying to explain about this chart.
Yeah, you can really see the migration here of if you go to the extremes of the chart, if you go to masters and then migrate all the way over to masters in 2023, I mean, you got 213 kids that moved into mastery with 138 of them sitting at beats. I mean, that's a pretty good migration of students, right? If I'm reading that right. And then at the very top, the other extreme, you had 89 and then we shrunk that down to 2. Right.
So they were low in 22, they did not pass, they were the lowest of the low in 2022, and then we had 2 students that went all the way to masters.
2 went all the way to masters, okay, I got it.
Correct, and I would be wanting to know who those kids are too.
89 stayed the same.
Correct.
89 stayed the same, 44 improved a little,
I got you.
26 improved a little bit more than a little,
And they just
15 improved quite a bit, 5 improved a lot, and 2 knocked it out of the park.
Gotcha.
crazily, yeah. So basically your green, everything in green earns you full credit. We got full credit for those kids, okay? If they're in blue, this one gets a little bit more difficult. What that is those kids, they scored in the same quadrant. So basically they scored, if they were high did not meets and high did not meets, they were in that same quadrant, but they actually performed just a little bit better than 2022, but they stayed in that quadrant, so they just earn us half credit. Does that make sense? But that's still okay because they're still, they didn't lose ground.
Right.
They stayed in that same quadrant, so we're happy with those. And then all those in red,
We want
went
to look
back.
up.
So up in the top, those numbers reflect this. So we had 475 who did not grow at all. We had 164 that got partial credit, and we got 870 with full credit, which gave us 1,034 students that grew last year, which was 69%. Are we good?
Yeah.
Questions? No questions? Okay, perfect. All right, let's look at math. So same chart, and this time you'll see the number overall of growth, it's really low, but that's because in ELAR we have an extra grade level, English 2. So our math numbers are smaller. Okay. So on this one, we had 383 kids with no growth, we had 142 kids with partial growth, and we had 699 students with full growth, which gave us 849 that grew, which ended up at the same percentage as the LAR. So we're at 69% that showed growth. Any questions on that?
Does that compare, is there a state comparison on that scale?
Like this chart?
Yeah, like, is 69%, are we beating the average, or are we?
I don't know, but that's a good question. I'm not sure if I've seen it.
I mean, like, it's great
Mm-hmm.
on a per kid
Mhm.
basis to get that amount of growth. From a district standpoint, you know, they always compare you to everybody else, you know, no matter what even if it's apples to apples, oranges to apples, it doesn't matter.
I mean, it'll show up in your, when we get accountability, it'll, domain 2, the part A is this. So based on your grade of that, pretty much tells you, I guess, how you're compared to everybody else. But I don't know if we can see it exactly by the state.
Gotcha.
But the best thing about these two reports that I just shared with you is the fact that it is clickable, it's interactive, and we know exactly who those kids are, and that's where the rubber meets the road with our interventions and everything we're doing on campus, so.
That's awesome.
Well, we appreciate you putting this.
Yeah, that was good,
Yes,
thank you.
Very, very good.
And I think, as long, I don't know that I've seen a report with that many positive numbers on there before, and I've been on here a long time. So, obviously, great work to the teachers and the people who are out there actually doing it. It's good to see, thank you.
Yep, they're the hard workers, I'm the reporter. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tammy.
Okay, that will take us to discussion. This is the 2024-2025 calendar and directions for setting a board action on the calendar. What do you need from us, Bob, on this? I know y'all.
Well, Tana, sorry about that, Tana. Alicia has provided you a school calendar. What we wanted you to do is just kind of look at it. It mirrors exactly what we're doing this year. Our reason for, we just a few, but it's pretty close to a mirror. The reason we wanted to bring it to you is our number one driving factor is, as we set the convocation for this year, because of the date we set it, our calendar, we had some people set for being contracted by us, and then those kind of fell through. So we had to go to step 2. We are gonna bring that person back in January, but if we can have the calendar set now, then Demetric is confident that the person that we wanna bring in August will be able to be the main and the only focus of our convocation. Confident.
Show up in January.
Yeah, we feel, well, the one you see in January was scheduled to be here in August, but when we set the original contract and we hadn't had the date solid, they have people that book them. So
Right.
they ended up getting booked.
Yeah.
And it conflicted with ours. So we feel like we can get ahead of that curve and start doing that for the future, that we will be able to do a better job of bringing you, the board, people in that can start us off with a bang rather than a bust.
Good. Has this copy been taken to any kind of committee yet?
You're the first one seeing it.
I mean,
What
just-
if we,
yeah.
do we need to set the whole calendar, or can we just say that's gonna be the start date?
I just need a day for convocation.
That's why we're bringing this to you.
What I don't wanna do is we have to come back because of the fair or something
That's,
else.
that would be the one thing on here that's not,
Right.
we had to make a guess on the fair date,
Yeah.
because,
They haven't set the
they
fair.
haven't
I
set
would,
the fair
I mean,
date.
if it's possible for us to just say,
That's what we're
Pick
looking
a-
for.
pick a start date and we go with that, to me, that's easier.
That's
Less-
why, I think, Rich, you're right on. That is exactly what we're looking for you. We don't mind setting it in October, November, December. We just need to know how you all feel about when we're starting, because you heard tonight someone say that we need more time to give to our teachers before the school year starts. I mean, that is what our comment was about tonight.
I haven't heard any teachers say that.
We do.
Well, I don't think we have any teachers saying that, Mr. Brock.
You never have enough time, but we've had more this year.
This was good.
So this has us coming back to school on the 14th, am I reading that right?
Correct. So Wednesday, this past year, we had to come on a Tuesday, which almost
I was under the impression,
teachers like Wednesdays. They get a lot of feedback on Wednesdays, so.
I was under the impression that we would start later this next year, because we started way early this year, am I right?
No,
No, there was,
2 years ago,
The only way we can do that is if we go after, like, a Memorial Weekend.
No, it does not bother me one way or the other, but I just wanna make sure that when we set this, that we don't come back in a couple of months and say, hey, state said this.
No,
Okay.
we should.
So 2020, we started early and then we had to change it because of COVID.
Right.
2021, we started early. 2022, last year, we moved it to mirror this, and we actually started a week later.
So we started on August 20th-ish this year? I thought
We started on the 15th this
15th.
We
year,
started on the
but the
15th.
previous year we started August 10th.
Correct.
Wow.
So we
The
moved
teachers
it.
just had a whole bunch more days this year.
Moved
This
on
year.
the front side.
Football starts even earlier next year than it did this year.
Yeah, we started July, but
It'll be that again this year.
that's fine. I mean, it doesn't.
So are you
That's when we
thinking
wanna
like
start,
the
yeah.
convocation on that Thursday, August 1st? Would that be that
That's
first?
typically what we've done in the past.
That's the day?
So
That's what we're asking.
here's what I would tell you. Let's just, I think we should, if y'all are confident that that needs to be our start date, because nobody ever argues about the start date. So just pick that day. I mean, really,
Yeah.
the bickering is about the spring break and the fair day and that other
So
stuff.
do we need to vote to empower you to do that, or you just
No.
want to start date?
We're just looking for you to give input like you're giving right now.
I say book the guy and we don't need to bring this back up until we.
Till you need it, but
Until we
August
adopt
first
the
will be the
calendar.
date that I'll be booking.
Alright,
That's all we wanted from you because we felt like this year we got,
kinda caught in limbo.
well, it was more than limbo.
I was giving you an out, Bob.
We got caught in limbo.
Alright, that goes to business and operations. The discussion and consideration for a resolution seeking an exemption from the requirements of House Bill 3, which is on page 71.
Correct. So board members, you, I'm sure are aware that House Bill 3 requires a police officer at each and every campus. And so what we are doing is seeking a resolution to be exempt. We do not have to turn it into the state, we just have to provide reason why we are doing this. So if you'll, you should have gotten this resolution that I wrote up.
Correct.
And I just wanna read to you the reasons, that all the therefores and stuff, since Ed's not here, we won't read this.
I could try to call him real quick, he can listen in.
Proclamation.
But the district's non-compliance is due to a lack of available funding. El Campo ISD currently has 4 SROs assigned to individual campuses, 1 at the high school, 1 at middle school, 1 at Northside Myatt, and 1 at Hutchins, with salaries for all 4 that exceed the state level of funding. Adding a 5th SRO would place a burden on the educational funding system. The safety of the students and staff at Myatt will be ensured with the continuation of the dual role of the SRO assigned to Northside based upon the proximity and the implementation of the Guardian program. And I didn't put it in there, but I would add that we bought a, what do you call that, a gate, what do you,
Right,
Can-Am to drive right across the parking lot. I think our SRO does a good job, and there's, in fact, less distance from the gymnasium at Northside to the gymnasium at Myatt than there is from the gymnasium at the high school to the H building. So what we're trying to do is provide safety to everyone, and so we feel we can do this with the 4 SROs. Plus, you know, I've talked to the chief, he thinks that in an emergency, we might be able to find enough staff at the PD, but they're struggling filling all their roles. And they've just gotten them filled, and if we pull 1 more out of their role, then they're gonna continue to have issues with the police department. So, and they will respond to our campuses in case of an emergency also. So I would recommend the board pass this resolution, and that we continue with the fact this came from the security committee way back when. They brought it to you earlier, but the state law changed in the meantime, so now we have to do the resolution.
Will the state still have to approve?
No,
No, we don't.
I mean, this'll
No,
do
is
it.
this'll do it.
Yeah, it seems to me.
And we're in way better
Yeah.
position
No, I
than
think so.
I mean,
the
they're so,
majority of the state.
they're so close there that, it's just
We'll
like
make them
having one on
5
both
minutes.
campuses.
A lot of these bigger districts are 40, 50 officers short.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know, I've heard that on there.
Further discussion?
I move that we approve the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That was motion by Mr. Dubrowski and second by Mr. Doherty.
Hutchins did really well with their.
Well, we can't talk about that in open session till after we go to closed session.
That was a part of it.
That does take us to closed session, all right?
Yes, sir.
So,
We'll only have the superintendent report when we come back. And at that point, we'll talk about those 3 portions that are in the superintendent's report. I asked Demetric and Alicia and Amanda to stay. I'm not telling the others they have to stay. I don't think, in my opinion, closed session will take less than 3 minutes and then we'll come back out into open session. So if people wanna stay, I know Mr. Fleener might have an issue about wanting to stay, but,
I'd love to stay,
No,
but
I mean-
I have to go.
Let me say but.
time is now 6:51 and we'll adjourn into closed session. In closed session under Texas Government Code 551.
2 separate.
.074 and 551.076 and 551.89. Ready? Time is now 6:58. We'll reconvene in open meeting.
So, board members, there's no personnel issues to deal with. Under the superintendent's report, I'd just like to tell you that our intruder detection audit came back with no findings, so we were pleased with that. I'd like to commend all of our campuses for their preparation for these unannounced safety checks and audits.
That takes us to item 10A1.
Oh, that's what, I just did 10A1,
Yeah, you did.
so 10B,
10B1,
yes.
2023 near final summary of finance.
Can we pause that, cause I'll let Mr. Wells go last, cause mine are gonna be simple. Can we do 10B2 and 10E1?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so 10B2, Wharton County is presented us with an MOU. I'm working with Billie Jean Bram at the juvenile probation to put it into practice. But this would be a place, school districts that are in counties with more than 125,000 people are required by state law to have a juvenile justice alternative educational program to educate students who've been expelled. So,
Or
what's that?
incarcerated or whatever.
What's Wharton County's population?
40,
yeah, but,
45.
so
Say
it's
under
not,
120?
over 125,000, you have to have it. We don't have to have it. So if we have a student who gets expelled, they get expelled to the streets and there's no educational opportunity. So the Wharton County Juvenile Justice Probation will start a JJAEP is what it's called, Juvenile Justice Alternative Educational Program, that would be voluntary for us to participate in.
And you recommend that we?
I would recommend that we do that because right now, when we expel students, they don't get an education anywhere.
Do you, and this requires action tonight?
Nope, not tonight.
Okay.
Not until I get the MOU finalized. I'm just prepping you all for the fact that I'm working behind the scenes.
And that memorandum is with who?
Wharton County Juvenile Justice,
Okay.
the probation department.
Ms. Brand heads that up.
Billie Jean Bram is the probation officer.
What is MOU?
Memorandum of understanding.
Memorandum of understanding.
That would be just on a as needed basis, or we would have seats in there.
We would have seats in there.
Who would pay for it?
Yeah, that's my next question. Where's the
We
money?
do. But they've gotten a grant, so we would only be paying for what we call seed money and then per day basis of kids when you send them.
This is a good deal.
They need to be
Oh,
somewhere,
they need to be
Maybe to be
somewhere.
off the
Yeah.
streets if
Yeah.
they need to be.
whatever it costs.
Is that regular ed and sped
Mhm.
kids?
I hope it's a big grant.
It is. It is, they're only planning on doing 10 seats, and it is a collaboration between El Campo, Louise, Wharton, East Bernard, and Bowling. So
That's
all
enough
5
seats.
school districts would
Yeah.
provide
10 seats per town in the county, or
10
total?
seats, 10 seats total for those 5 districts. But these are expulsions, so remember, this is an expulsion.
Right.
This is not a,
Suspension.
it's not a
Right.
DAEP placement.
Okay.
You're right,
We
you're right.
don't have many.
That
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's hard to do. Okay.
So then I'll just talk real quickly about chapter 37 of the Texas Education Code. And what could end up being an expulsion. That's why these two things are together on the agenda. Chapter 37 has certain things that are mandatory expellable. So since I've been here, we've only had one mandatory expellable. And we expelled that student, and we followed state law in chapter 37. You can expel up to a calendar year, and in some cases, longer than a calendar year, if you have extenuating circumstances, and in that individual's case, we did. And so we expelled for about 18 months. We also have some that are discretionary expellable. And so we have done those also for students who make threats that disrupt the entire school district or a campus. In those cases, we have typically listened to all the evidence, gathered everything into consideration, and even though it's not a full year expellable, it partially could be the remainder of a semester, and then placement in the DAEP, and then of course we have just the DAEP placements, which is chapter 37.006, and there are mandatory DAEP placements. So the discretionary expellable are a little bit above seriousness wise than the mandatory placements in a DAEP, and they're a little bit below the mandatory expulsion. So we try to give a wide variety of situations, and I'm sure I try to keep you abreast of when there are kids who've made threats that cause a disruption. So what would be a disruption? Well, let's say I make a threat, and then all of a sudden, the day the threat is supposed to come to fruition, we typically have 95% attendance, and now we have 85% attendance. And parents are calling us saying, we're not bringing our kids to school. So that is a disruption, and so we typically deal with those in that space between mandatory DAEP placements and mandatory expulsion. Those things are mandatory DAEP, but they've disrupted the school environment, and we think that those are different than a student who gets caught vaping with marijuana in a bathroom, which are mandatory DAEP. So we try to keep those three things separate. And our whole focus is to meet your goal of having a safe and secure environment. Questions you might have?
No, sir.
Mr. Wells, you're up then.
10B1.
All right. That's about as exciting as I will sound during this discussion. Actually, what you guys are gonna be looking at is you have two summary of finances in front of you. What you're gonna actually see, if you look at the top up under the green title, summary of finances from the 2022-2023 school year, you'll look up under that blue El Campo ISD. You're gonna see one that says August 10th, 2023, and then you're gonna see one that I just got today, which is September 27th, 2023. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the August 10th summary of finance first. Okay, just to give you some data points, LPE basically stands for the Legislative Planning Estimate. So that's what the state's basically saying, that they planned when, you know, when they were giving us money, they gave us money based on these numbers. And then if you look at the DPE, that's the District Planning Estimate. That's basically really and truly kind of like what it ended up being after the attendance and everything actually went through. So you'll actually see, if you look at our refined ADA, from the beginning of the school year, where we basically started with 3250, by the end of the school year, that district planning estimate, which we basically see your funds on, was just about 3016. Now, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna look down, and I'll show you where you get to on page 2 of 43. You'll start to see our special programs. Once you look at line 25, line 25 is the career and technology allotment, okay? You see the legislative planning estimate was basically 3.72 million. That's what they basically kind of planned that we were gonna get. But up until August the 10th, you know, we knew that we were gonna actually lose a little bit of money, but we had already been figuring that, you know, we were planning for that. And so even at as late as August 10th, we were still expecting to get roughly $3.3 million, okay, for CTE funding. If you look over at that CTE funding, what is real important about this for everybody to understand is where you see that spend 55% of that amount. What that spending that 55% of that amount does, and it's just the same as like state comp. You have to spend a certain percentage of that on CTE. So once you spend that 55%, it opens up that entitlement of that money to be able to be spent however you need to spend it locally. So if we spend our 55% of that, what we thought was gonna be $3.3 million, then you get to open up the rest of that money to spend however you need to spend it. That's what we do with salaries and things of that nature. So that's actually how that funding component actually works. All right, so we see August 10th, we go from, you know, basically 3.3 million, which we had already planned for. We knew that we were losing money because enrollment was down, enrollment was down. So we knew that. Okay, so what happens is all of this data is lagging data. And when we talk about lagging data, this is data that's basically coming out of your system, out of your input system, your data management system, that throughout the year, we actually have submissions. We have PEEM submissions. You know, we have a 1, a 2, and 3, okay? But one of them is just basically a business submission. Our final submission is the one that basically encompasses all of our programs, all of our special programs, and it gives us our data that they actually go in, and then they start figuring out your summary of finance for your near final. This is actually a near final, and a final will actually, there'll still be updates coming out, and you'll have a final, even though it's into this school year, it'll be at a later date. So let's go to the September 27th, the other summary of finance. Okay, still the same data. You see the LPE, that's the legislative planning. Okay, the near final, our number had even gone down after all of our PEEMS data went through with all of our attendance for the year. Basically, our near final ADA went down to 3004, okay? So let's go all the way down to page 2. And we're gonna go to line 25.
Where'd you get that 3,004 from? Mine says 2,321,000.
Huh?
That's on line 25.
At the top.
I'm talking
First
about
page.
the first page.
So,
Oh, I thought we were on.
Yeah, we're gonna go to that.
you lost us.
Okay.
Oh, you
All right.
were on
Okay.
25.
So-
Okay.
so-
Start with the ADA.
Okay.
So now I'm gonna start at ADA, okay, I wasn't clear, so I went to the new
Went
one,
back up to 88.
okay, I went back up to ADA. Alright, so I went back up to ADA, you see the legislative planning estimate was still the 3250,
Pretty close to what we were.
but then we went down to 3004, okay? So now we're gonna go back down to line 25 on page 2. Now, when you get down to line 25 on page 2, after all of our data had actually been submitted, we go from that legislative planning estimate of 3,727,000 to 2,321,000. So now what that has basically done is it's basically said, now that number, 55% of 2,321,000 is basically just like 1.2 million. Okay, so we lost that much money in CTE. Okay, when I saw this was actually staggering, it was alarming, you know, and it was something that we had to figure out, we had to investigate. Do we know the actual culprit of why it actually went to this? We do not know. I mean, as I sit here in front, I do not know how it actually happened. All I know is that it actually happened. There's several things, there's several factors, there's several eyes that have actually been on it. We actually use a data input system called Skyward, okay? So in using Skyward, there's different things that can glitch. And even with the glitch, we're still at a point to where we have to go through and we have to certify what we're actually sending to the state, because that's how we're actually funded. We've looked at several different things. We have work tickets into Skyward to try to figure out like how the funding source got turned off or where we missed it at. But at the end of the day, we still fail to be able to capture this money, okay? And that's what I'm basically here to tell you.
So the projection stays the same from the beginning,
Correct.
right? The 3,727.
And that's what we budgeted off.
And that's,
No,
We budgeted off of 3.3.
yes.
We budgeted off 3.3.
but 3,727 was there
That was
all along.
last year.
But
Yeah.
but those are like, pardon my language, seats in, like butts in the seat. Like we know there was, cause this funding is, a child sits in a CTE course. That's where the funding comes from.
Correct.
So that projection was based off of us knowing what that actual enrollment was.
Correct.
So we knew what the enrollment really actually was. Our number that got reported was much lower than that.
Correct.
Because this is not a function of ADA at all, because the ADA went down 8% and
So, and like if you look at other
Number
programs, if you look at other
38%.
programs, like, so let's go up and we'll look at, line 23. Let's look at line 23, state comp ed,
From 27 or from August
from
10th?
the 27th.
3,727.
So make sure everybody's on the September 27th.
September 27th, the one that we were just looking at. Go up to line 23. You can actually see that state comp went down just a hair, okay? Barely went down. If you look up at dyslexia actually went up because we had more people that were identified. So the system picked up the numbers that we had more identification of dyslexia, therefore turning on more funding for a bigger funding source for those students. If you look at bilingual, okay, the number kind of went down, but it was all kind of just small numbers until you get to CTE.
And it's the CTE, attendance that threw that off.
Well, it's not really it is attendance because that's the report that you actually look at.
Right.
You know, because
You know
it's
what your attendance is.
correct.
It should know every day
Mhm.
what your attendance is. So why did did it go down? Did it actually go down?
No.
I mean, we
So it
still
just was
have,
reported wrong.
can we petition?
We can, so I spoke to another guy today and he said, you can try. He said, but right now, he's like, they're still gonna probably tell you no because you certified and submitted.
So
but when we certified and submitted,
Didn't it look kind of
did it look funny then, or did? It's a lot of money.
It's not something that I looked at.
I would still try, try.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Try to reason with them because it was more or less a computer glitch, you think?
We don't know.
I think it'd be a good idea to try to figure that out.
We
what
are.
about Says everybody doesn't use Skyward. Like, it's not, I mean, everyone doesn't use that. But do we know if there's any other districts dealing with like issues with Skyward? Now, Skyward's not gonna tell us that, we know that. But other districts that are.
We are pursuing that avenue to find out how many other districts had similar issues.
But Skyward doesn't report straight to the state. Skyward has I would guess, I mean, I don't know anything about Skyward, so, but I would say that if I'm Skyward and I'm writing software, it's gonna generate the reports, and you're gonna get the reports and say, please review these reports. Here's your report for review.
Make sure everything on there is correct.
And then they're never gonna get sued.
Correct. So the bigger ramifications, when we start talking about the bigger ramifications, is the amount of funding that we've lost. So we have to be strategic and forward thinking, moving forward, knowing that because we've already had our settle up, which I reported to you guys about us in the settle up process, at the last board meeting when we were talking about, instead of getting our big check, you're gonna get a small one now.
Right.
Well, now, anything that anything that was an overpayment after you've gone through your near final, that's gonna be something that's gonna look different on this year's funding. So now, you're gonna be generating less of a payment. Does that make sense?
By the full 1.4 million or a different amount?
Well, no, by the full 1.4.
Because.
But we only budgeted for 3.3. So we already had moved 400,000 out based upon the numbers that we saw. Now we're looking to try to, without panicking anybody, we're trying to maneuver our budget. And I think our bigger issue is working with the high school to make sure that we can identify what created the situation in the number of CTE students that were being counted.
So when you go in there now and look at it for fall of 23, does it show that it's
now we have it, now it shows correct.
But did it show correct 2 weeks ago, whenever we found this out?
We can look historically and see.
We ended up fixing something, didn't we? Yeah.
Any other questions? I think y'all will come back with further information on that.
We will,
we will, but I just want everybody to be forward thinking, because when I say this, at the end of the day, it's a difficult lesson to learn. This won't ever happen to us again, because you'll have several people looking at it. But it's a hard lesson to learn. Without a doubt. But at the end of the day, when I talk about forward thinking, we have to be forward thinking in the way we're spending. There's gonna be a lot of questioning of the things that we purchase. We've already been in the process of telling principals, hey, like, if you're gonna buy that needs to come out of an activity account. I know it may be nickel and diming, but when you're trying to make up things, you have to pay attention to the pennies.
Yep. Any further discussion, questions right now? That'll bring us to adjournment. The time is now 7:21, and there being no further business on the agenda, I now declare this meeting